I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dream always has a story.
It's Dream, and we got a season 2. Your Black Bostonian here, a product of a single mother who I work to make proud every single day. I'm a 3-degree holder, your veteran educator, your tech entrepreneur, and founder of the Chair platform. My platform is dedicated to supporting Black and Brown people on their hair journey by creating hair boards, connecting to hairstylists, and sharing haircare tips for a more joyous experience. My podcast is about sharing hair stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and stories surrounding identity with goals to leave you laughing, learning, and advocating. So come in and listen to the stories in the chair.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Porsha. Porsha, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Porsha Olayiwola, and I'm super excited to be here.
Porsha, the first time I saw you perform was years ago at the Milky Way. You were a feature poet, and my cousin D. Ruff called me and said, "Hey, there's somebody performing today that you need to see, and I can introduce you." And I was in the line waiting to shake your hand, and you were
Oh my God.
very polite and very kind. And after I shook your hand, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to get her poetry into my classroom. That was my goal. I was like, more people need to see this beautiful art. And over the years, I've been able to do that with my middle schoolers, my high schoolers. And my middle schoolers who went to high school ended up getting you to go to their school. You did a performance at Phillips Andover a while back.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that was it was cool to see the kids be able to be like, oh, I remember her performances. And
Yeah, that was actually an incredible time with those young people.
it was for me, when I think about art, I think about people like you who are giving people access into so many worlds and stringing together beautiful words. And so I've been a super fan for a very long time, and so I'm really, really, really excited to talk
Not
to
a
you.
super fan.
A super fan. I'm a super fan. I'm a
Well,
fan
feelings
girl.
mutual.
Yeah. And so I started building the chair, which is a platform dedicated to supporting Black and Brown people on their hair journey. Then I started building the Chair podcast to be able to share hair stories in addition to stories about education, entrepreneurship, and identity, because as an educator who ended up going to business school to study racism and now is working to build a beauty tech social enterprise, people find my story very confusing. But for me, it feels very interwoven, entangled, and beautifully complex. Do you remember the first time you fell in love with your hair?
Wow, that is a loaded question, eh? I've been so emotional the last week or 2 weeks, so I'm going to try to move through this conversation without tears. But do I remember the first time I fell in love with my hair? I can't say that I do. I think when I guess the moments in which I actually really enjoy my hair and I feel close to it, close to her, almost happen retrospectively when I am feeling as though I'm like looking at a picture or something and I'm like, oh, this wasn't as bad as I remember. This was actually cute. And it is an ongoing process of re-falling in love with the hair. I feel like I've always struggled with my hair and how it looked and versus how I wanted it to look. The most recent times was one, I was looking at a picture when I had no hair, which I don't know if that qualifies for falling in love with the hair, but so I would cut my hair and I was bald and I was like, actually, she was a little stub muffin. I think that's a moment recently where I'm just kind of looking back. And then also now that I'm like growing out these locks, I made a decision to move towards locked hair and also to do it by way of extensions because I did not want to sit through the process of awkward locks. Every now and then when I go to the hairdresser, I'm like, oh, I actually really made a great decision. I love this. It cost me an arm and a leg, but it was worth it.
So help me understand, what are the big struggle points when it comes to loving your hair or enjoying it? What are those struggle points for you currently?
Currently it's gotten a lot better. I think I can't remember once in college, I had a huge breakdown about my hair. And ever since then, it's been a journey of getting closer to what I want it to look like, what I want it to feel like. I think now that I'm an adult and I have jobs and therefore have money, I can get it to look how I want it to look. I pay for it to look how I want it to look. I think outside of that, the struggle is making sure I have time for that kind of care. And then I noticed that the biggest struggle around my hair is tethered to gender expression and whether or not I look more femme than I anticipate myself looking, or whether or not I think the biggest tension is really around the barbershop. As a woman presenting person moving through a male dominated space, that always feels interesting. I find that all the barbershops in Boston, all the ones that I just so happen to go to, have a language barrier, right? It's oftentimes Dominican folk leading those spaces. And there feels like not only is there a gender barrier, there's a language barrier. And then on top of that, as a person who moved through the world kind of as a traveling poet, I would find that my best haircuts came outside of the city. So those are really the tension around it now, is feeling aligned with how I want to look based on gender presentation, as opposed to actually being able to achieve that alongside some of the other things. And now I finally am in a place where I have a consistent hairdresser who I've been going to, I guess, for almost, maybe a little over a year now. Showed up to my wedding. She's like, I really appreciate this woman. So that's been feeling good. I've been in Boston for, I don't even know, almost 15 years. And I would try almost a different hairdresser each time. And now I'm at the point where I've had somebody steady for. So that part of the journey feels good. Now it's about finding the barber.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hair boards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hair boards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the Chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
It's been interesting having these interviews because I've talked with people who have these relationships with their barbers, and they talk about the intensity it is when you find that right person. They talk about that love of consistency, and they talk about being able to have the conversations about how they see themselves with their barber. There's like a beautiful intensity. It's the same thing with, I feel like, when you find that braider, or when you find
Absolutely.
that person who knows how to do that best blowout, and you're like, this is where I'm going today.
Absolutely.
You have a poem called Tangled that I was re-listening to this morning, talking about someone touching your hair and that experience. It brought me back. I had a moment where I was traveling and I was in London, and my hair was in rainbow braids, and every braid had clear beads on it, so it was like shh, 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 like all of that.
Epic.
And I'm walking down the street to head to the train, and minding my business, I'm by myself. And you see people walk by, you see people just doing their own thing. And I saw a white woman across the street, but I didn't think anything of it. And then she started to run, and I was looking around, and I was like, oh, there's no issue here. So I don't know what she's running for or towards, but she was running towards me, and she runs towards me, and she ends up putting her hand on my shoulder, and she says, hey, I just want to let you know that your beads are really loud. I don't know if you know how loud they are when you walk. And I was like, wow, this woman ran across the street.
Wow.
To catch up to me, to inform me of my beads.
It's like, they get louder the closer you are to me.
And so when I was listening to your poem, I felt like I was hearing my story over again from a different perspective. And I'm curious to know why that particular moment turned into a poem for you.
I think part of it was, one, I was working on a series where Black folk are turned into Disney characters and what that narrative would look like. And two, it's just startling. I mean, I think what I end up noticing about all four of those poems, there's Ursula and fatness, there is the genie and being enslaved, and then there is Cinderella and name pronouncing, and obviously Rapunzel and Black hair is just fitting. I mean, I'll never forget the day, right? Part of the poem was inspired by being in a convenience store, and my partner has really glorious hair, and I think somebody tried to touch it. And for me, it just kind of offered an alternate world. And it's one of those things that constantly happens. And that's happened to me, that's happened to my partner, that's happened to almost everybody I know. And I think what I noticed about all of the little moments with the Disney characters is that each were about microaggressions. And almost like, what do you do in those moments? Because microaggressions are small, but they're also these acts of aggression. And I think in that particular poem, the speaker or the main character or the Rapunzel doesn't really respond, right? She has this moment where she like literally goes off and curses this person out. And then at the end, it's all in her head. And so I was really trying to capture how these moments exist in an instance for the said perpetrator of the aggression. Whereas for Black folks or marginalized folks or et cetera, we have to literally have a whole mental recomposition of what just occurred. And I think it's also just about being hyper visible. Sometimes I think about Blackness, or at least my being in the world, as one of two ways, either hyper visible or completely invisible. And I think that, those things are both dangerous occurrences. I don't know, I can still imagine that day vividly in the poem and outside of the poem. And every time I do it, I feel like I mostly do it around young people who often have a similar experience. And when I say young, I mean like middle school.
Yeah, I think about that every time I wear my afro. When I wear it really big around my kids, it always ends up becoming a conversation about intersectionality, about my professionalism, my Blackness, and then what I'm teaching about beauty standards to kids. It feels like
absolutely.
It feels like there's so many layers to that conversation every day. And so when it comes to loving my hair, for me, the moments of being absolutely content end up being a conversation for the adults who are not content in their own bodies or hair. And then they're trying to have that conversation around kids. And for me, I'm always like, hey, we can have that conversation, but the kids are learning through our conversation. So I'm always like, okay, can we reframe it? How do we want to talk about hair in the classroom? How do we want to talk about love and understanding that just because your hair isn't perfect, in quotation marks, that day doesn't mean that you aren't still beautiful. You aren't still the person you are. I think a lot about that when it comes to the hyper visibility or invisibility when it comes to hair and kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Beauty standards and representation is a wild concept.
So I'm standing in the checkout line at the grocery store. Been standing, waiting patiently. I mean, at least I ain't looking busted. My hair is laid and I got these freshies on my feet, so at the minimum, if I'm out here for this long, at least I give the people something kind to look at. My sisters say, don't matter if the lights are cut off at the crib, or if uncle takes over your bed and you don't have a place to sleep, stay dressed to impressed. In other words, stay fly. Say you never know who you're going to see out here in these streets, and I'm thinking I might see the whole damn city, because for some reason, unknown to me, they only got one register open tonight. I bust open my flaming hots to curb my hunger. I'm too pressed to get back to the high-rise at Cabrini. Anyway, it's my turn, and I start loading my groceries onto the moving conveyor belt at the counter. I see the cashier scanning, all frantic and shit, and then he takes the time to look up at me, you know, like I'm a person or whatever. He says, wow, I really love your hair. It's beautiful, and I think about time. Because I knew I was looking like a bag of money. About time. Somebody noticed all this fine. About time I get ready to say thank you. This freckle-faced redhead says, if you don't mind me asking, is it yours? Is it weave? Can I touch it? And then this pumpkin-looking motherfucker is no longer touching my groceries, but he's got his paled, crusty sword fingers in my hair, and I don't say anything, which is crazy because I'm known to cut a bitch quick for just looking at me too long in the projects. But here, I feel stiff, like a brick high-rise building or a redwood coffin, like the black dress they buried my mother in, like my brother. And all I could think about is death. I mean, I could feel his fingers in my hair, but I think I'm dead. And I wonder if I ever belong to me anyway. I wonder if I'm just a beautiful thing meant for the world to make theirs. I think about how I gave myself something kind to look at in this ugly world. Now he gonna go and touch it and make it his too. I think I must not belong to me. I'm his too. He touched the whole world and it's his too. I wish I was kin to Medusa right now. Wish my hair would grow heads and bite his fingers bloody and he would jerk back his hands. I wish my hair could morph into switchblades, machetes, or knives. I wish each strand was a rope so I could hang each of his fingers to death, levitate his hands from my scalp. Don't he know my scalp is holy ground? My hair is black magic. I think I put a spell on you, boy. I scream to no one as I hand him the money.
I'm curious to know about you when you started really writing and entering into the world of slam poetry. How much of your identity was leading the direction of your poems?
That's a really great question. So when I first started into slam poetry, how much of my identity was leading a direction?
Mm-hmm.
That's lovely. I think I would say it was like 50% identity, 50% intellectualism, if that makes sense. And more to say, when I first entered, I had just graduated undergrad. And obviously, I chose to study myself because that is the only thing I found interesting. No, I'm just kidding. But I did get my degree in Africana Studies with minors in gender and women and U.S. history. So I was very much spending 4 years kind of studying theories and theses around what it meant to be Black, what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to be queer, and what that intersectionality meant. It's really interesting. I've been reading too much Henry David Thoreau, but he was suggesting, and maybe this Korean novelist, both of them back to back kind of suggest that the American education system is flawed and that you have all this work to do and also you don't learn anything. And so once I moved to Boston, maybe 3 months after graduating undergrad, I had zero money. I was volunteering for a living. I lived in an apartment by myself and I didn't know anybody here. And so I spent all my time literally writing poems, memorizing them. I would do 3 new poems every single time. They would all be about my intellectualizing myself, if that made sense. And so obviously some of them were probably angry Black women. Some of them were about capitalism. Some of them were about W.E.B. Du Bois' double consciousness as it relates to me, who identified as a nerd, but also hood adjacent. So all of them were about exploring my identity, but also I thought they also offered these theories that I had engaged with in the institution or in academia. Pretty much all of it. It's interesting that the first book feels like it's very much so an exploration of those buckets of identity, whereas I noticed the second one is more historical based, if you will.
One of my favorite poets of all time, Nikki Giovanni, and one of my favorite writers of all time, Bell Hooks. And I feel like when I'm writing poems, I feel like I'm talking to them. Like I'm writing to them. I'm writing for them.
I mean, you definitely are. Well, I mean, they say all writing is in conversation with other writing. So it's good to know who you're talking to, if you will.
Yeah, I imagine writing a piece and then we talk about it over hot chocolate because I don't drink coffee. One of my favorite Bell Hooks books is Teaching to Transgress. And that was one of the first books I read of hers when I first started teaching. When I first started teaching, it was a book that I just kept flipping through pages and going backwards and forwards. And so then
I love that.
Anytime I was arguing with myself, I was going back to her book and finding arguments and debating with her as if she was my roommate.
I love that.
And so you doing that with yourself now that you're working on your second book and it has more of a historical context, do you feel like you're having the conversation with different parts of society or with different groups of people?
More so, I had the privilege of doing a talk with Kiese Lamont, who's an incredible writer. But he was talking about the reason he writes and suggested it was for repair work. And, I've been thinking a lot about that. And mine is a lot about the Black diaspora and exploring Black sites of trauma and violence as it relates to Black people in water. In addition to that, it's also about queer intimacy. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily conversations with different parts of society, but really with, I think, maybe ancestors. And it's definitely to Black folk, but I think part of it is less to Black folk and more to Black ancestors, if that makes sense. And the other part is, if I had to really specify who those were, it would probably be Toni Morrison, who says all water has a perfect memory and it's forever trying to get back to where it was. And then she also says, if there's a story that you haven't seen that you wanted to write, you must write it. And so I've been really thinking about the queer intimacy as like, I've never seen fat Black women have sex, and I want to write that. So it's in conversation with her, if we're talking about people being in conversation, as well as in conversation with some folk, Black folks specifically, who have gone by way of water. And I think some of it might also be towards the biomythography of my name. The biomythography, Zamia, new spelling of my name. That book. In it, there's, I think, either an epigraph or the opening scene, epilogue maybe, she is talking about wanting to be both man and woman and wanting to enter a woman in the same way a man can. And so I've been like really holding on and harping on to that statement as a kind of ideology. So I feel like those are the people I'm in conversation with and writing towards myself, to people who look like me or move through the world like me and feel like me. And then also ancestors who have gone by way of water, I would suggest.
Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. You're taking the time right now to found, run, and operate a bookstore. And I love that. A library is one of my favorite sacred places in the world. And a bookstore is not that far from it, because a bookstore allows you to be able to bring different types of people into the same space. And libraries don't necessarily do that in certain neighborhoods. And so there's a love there for me in terms of a library, in terms of a bookstore. And you talking about writing to ancestors, writing is always in conversation. What does that relationship look like for you in books? Why a bookstore right now? What is that relationship like for you?
I think for us studious, nerdy people, so us writers, we want always to be surrounded by nothing more than things that are aesthetically appealing, but also books. My house, I'm surrounded by books. In my office, I'm surrounded by books. Here, I'm surrounded by books. And so part of it is quite literally surrounding myself with the work and the people that I want to be around and be in conversation with. I've always felt that part of my role in my life and my hard work is around service. Yeah, totally starting a bookstore, but it's definitely not mine. Doesn't belong to me. Doesn't belong to me or Bing. It's more so, I don't want to call it a gift, but it was just a responsibility to open up a space that, one, has this air of bookstore or this air of academia or etc., but also two is really this community gathering space and this notion of being surrounded by books or being surrounded by knowledge or being surrounded by conversation and having things like a drag roundtable or a culinary event or et cetera and so forth. But I think for me, it's more so about, one, the work that I want to do and want to be surrounded with. Two, I tell a lot of folks, I'm from the south side of Chicago. I'm not from Boston, but Boston is home. Three's up. No. But that as a young person, I would always be like traveling to, I can't remember if it was Borders or Barnes and Nobles at this point, but I would be traveling. And I lived on the far south side, and in order to get to like a Barnes and Nobles or Borders, you had to go to the far west south side. I lived on the far southeast side, and that takes about 45 to an hour. And then the other place I would spend my time is downtown, and that took about an hour to get to the main library. And I would do it like every day and every weekend. Me and some of my friends would go to these cafes. It dawned on me at some point, like, damn, there's not one in my neighborhood that I can just walk to. And so it's been really nice, one, living here and living in Dorchester and being able to walk to the bookstore to like have that. And then people come in and they have this conversation all the time. They're like, oh my God, I grew up here and we could never walk here. And so, I kind of just wanted a space where, one, it was like in the neighborhood. It's not like in Back Bay or in Newberry or on the Seaport or downtown or in the South End. In Dorchester, you can walk to. And also, I know it's not open late, but also as a person who now works 9 to 5, but at some point was just a freelance artist who needed to meet with people or needed a place to write. Like, it was important to have things that were open a little later and accessible, and where you don't necessarily got to buy anything to be in here. I tell people I'm a selfish organizer because I really just create the things that I need and I want to see. So it's just been kind of a gift to do it with being who has similar ideologies, ways in which we want to interact with the community and gift to community. So I think that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Last question. Man, I got like 40 billion questions. I'm like, ah. Is there a book right now or a poem right now that is on replay in your mind that means something important at the moment to you?
It's interesting. I would say there's two, and they're not stereotypical, but they're definitely poems I return to. I don't know where I was, but recently I had the urge to get on the mic and read June Jordan's A Poem About My Rights. And primarily that ending, I can't tell you who in the hell set things up like this, but I can tell you that from now, my nightly and daily self-determination may very well cost you your life. Just thinking about self-determination in the context of the social political climate, but also in the context of self-care and allowing yourself to feel rage, a righteous rage, is something I'm trying to just kind of embody and keep as an ethos around me. And two, I just got a letter, I think from either a middle schooler or a high schooler. I haven't read it yet, but I kind of peeked in and it ended with Audre Lorde's A Litany for Survival. We were never meant to survive, so it's important not to remain silent. So I don't know, both of those things feel in conversation with each other. But yeah, I would say this morning when I walked in here, I saw that letter and I peeked at the back and I was like, not A Litany for Survival. Not that, not right now. Thank you. So I think that's the one. Those are two also just return to in my life every day. Not every day, on the regular.
Porsha, thank you so much for sharing your stories in the chair. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for being open and conversing with me.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dream always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I'm going to share with you a dream of mine. I would love to be on Sesame Street. Sesame Street held my hand through childhood. In my dream, I would be in my big afro or rainbow braids sitting on the stoop sharing hair stories. I would like your help, please, by doing all the things like leave a review, share it with someone who would benefit from hearing this episode. And if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone at Sesame Street, share your favorite episode with them and I'll make you some of my famous chocolatey hot chocolate. I hope you have a beautiful day, or if you are like me, still up in the middle of the night, I hope you take a deep breath and rest. Love you. Talk to you later.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Dream, hello. I just wanted to tell you you're wonderful. I just got through going through your podcast. Love you, love you, love you, love you. Keep it up. Maybe I need to send it to Oprah and Tyler Perry. Love you, baby. You are great.
Where we share stories in the chair.